MindShift Power Podcast.
This is MindShift Power Podcast, the #1 critically acclaimed podcast where we have raw, unfiltered conversations that shape tomorrow. I'm your host, Fatima Bey The MindShifter. And welcome, everyone. Today we have with us Christopher Carazas. He is from Massachusetts in the USA. He is an author and a social impact analyst. So, how are you doing today, Christopher?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I hope it's really fruitful for some listeners. So, tell us today, why are you on this podcast?
Largely because I grew up autistic without ever really understanding that I was autistic till I was about 35, and
Wow.
I just wanted to share my story as it pertained to that with you.
Yes, and that's because there are many. We have a lot more people with autism today than ever before. Some of that is simply because we're now understanding more, and so now we're
Mhm.
diagnosing more. I don't know if it's necessarily that there is more, but we're definitely recognizing it more. But I also know that there are lots and lots and lots of, especially people your age, but even some youth today who are growing up not understanding why they're different. They haven't been diagnosed yet. And
Right.
I really kind of want to speak to those people and make sure that we help them to know they're not alone, and
Yeah.
for other people around them to try to understand them. So you say that you were diagnosed at 35. That
Mhm.
is really old to be
Eh,
diagnosed.
in some circles, yeah, it's wicked old, right?
Because nowadays
Yeah,
we diagnose them younger, but again, that's because we know more.
right.
When you were younger, they didn't know any better. Honestly, most of society didn't know any better. So tell
Yeah,
us
we
a little
didn't.
bit about how you grew up.
Well, um, I grew up overseas, and I think that could have played a little bit um, into why I got diagnosed late.
Mhm.
I grew up, uh, in Latin America. I grew up in West Africa, um, and this was before the age of even cell phones and Facebook. That that it was like literally at the beginning of the internet, if you can imagine that. And so
Wow.
I think uh, I I went to international schools where I think kids were a lot more forgiving than they are here in the United States in terms of your quirkiness. So I use that in air quotes, quirkiness, right? We're a little quirky in our own ways, but um, for a long time, I I felt my quirkiness was a little too weird, right?
Mhm.
I didn't. If someone said X and I said X as well, uh, people would get more. They would get upset at me versus them, right? And I wouldn't understand why. Like they said this, why are they mad at me? And it took a long time to like understand that it was like the way I said it, like very serious, very blunt, very direct. Or I couldn't understand when or any kind of social cues if someone was tired, bored,
Mhm.
uh, upset. I mentioned that, or why even the sound of like someone chewing drove me up the wall versus everyone else seemed to not be bothered by it, or even worse, um, like a sudden change in my routine or um, a sudden change in plans, right? Um, that was not communicated ahead of time. Like why was that so upsetting to me? Where everyone else seem to have it roll off their back like, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So you can only kick and scream for so long before you start to annoy people. So I didn't have the language, I didn't have the word for this till I was finding out more about autism, but I realized that I had learned to mask, right?
Mm.
From an early age. So masking essentially is, if I can put it in like the most simple terms, coming across as normal for everyone else's perspective while suppressing who you really are and really feel inside. So like I had to repress the the annoyance I had when someone chewed with their mouth open, or the change of plans. Like I would get so frustrated, but I had to like have it roll off my back just like everyone else. And um, I I knew the mask took when in class, like as I got older in high school, like pleasure to have in class, often prepared, really wonderful with his colleague or with his classmates. That's when I knew like the they weren't really applauding me; they were applauding that mask that I had
Mm.
put on to come across as normal when I didn't feel so normal.
Mm. So you just unpacked a lot. You just told us a lot
Hmm.
about some of what it was like growing up. Um, and you touched on school a little bit.
Hmm.
Give us some more details of signs, I would say, that your brain is wired differently.
Um, it was all very like different kinds of signs. Like my biggest, there was really nothing to fear, or there was no like rhyme or reason. But like one of the things that really like triggered me, and I use that with air quotes too, is like the hallway where the sound um I would get so tense and like jumpy, as if like when like if you steal something and it's like your first time stealing, you like every little sound, like
Mhm.
because everything was so crowded, um like uh I just always seemed to tense up. Like meanwhile, like I knew I was wired a little bit differently when things that seem so complex to everyone else, like learning a language, um or like math, right? You just showed it to me once, and then all of a sudden I could do it in my head, right? Like even if it was like algebra, calculus, I could do things like that in my head in like a calculator, like a machine. I didn't really show the other thing that um I showed, or I could feel emotion, I could feel empathy, but it was hard to show it, right? Um and or at least verbalize it, or find the words for it at the right time. For like if someone's cat died or something, like I would feel bad for the person. I feel bad for the cat. I love cats, or I love pets. I even have a dog, but it's like, oh well, everyone dies. That would come out of my mouth first, rather than saying, oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't mean anything bad by it, right? Other than like it was like a faux pas, right? So I had to learn to lead with lead with that really sucks, man. Like rather than what really wanted to come out of my mouth first was everything dies, like, and then I'm really sorry your cat died, um, or physical contact, like my mom would try to hug me, I would squirm. Like I
Oh,
would
really?
like push anyone away that like try to give me any kind of, I still do, any kind of physical contact. Like I have to brace myself for, right? And that to me that wasn't normal. right? Like, who doesn't like a hug, right? Or,
Mhm.
but when I learned, uh, the more I learned about autism, it's like little signs like that, like strict adherence to routines. Uh, they're not comfortable in crowded spaces or loud environments, or they don't really appreciate physical contact as as easily as someone who is neurotypical or doesn't have or isn't on the spectrum, right? And
Mhm.
just little things like that would um, would really make me stop and pause and made me realize that I was a little bit different than everyone else.
And how did you handle those thoughts when you realized, "I'm a little bit different"? Like, what was your next thought?
Um, well, in high school or in school, it was like high school and stuff is the worst time for everybody. Like everyone feels awkward, but I just felt like terrible, like even worse, right? Because like I I I didn't even know what was going on, right? Like why I was so like so sensitive and so um easily overwhelmed. Like I didn't know what to do. I just kind of like buried it, right? Um, what I really wanted the world to see was that, oh, Jessica over there wants to give me a hug. I'm gonna let her, and this guy on my soccer team wants to high five me, and I'm gonna, I guess, high five him, even though I really don't want to, even though like it makes me really uncomfortable. Um, and that's what I kind of did back in the day. Now that I'm older, I really don't care as much. I I will throw people a bone once in a while. Like if like my parents, like if they want to give me a hug, I'll be like, okay, fine. Like even though they know I don't like it, but um, I'm not so afraid to show it my discomfort, um, especially with them.
So, if there are I'm asking you all of those details because I think these seem like minor, minute details, but they're details that are true for a lot of people in the spectrum and not just you. Everybody's details aren't the same because everybody's not the same. But sensitivity to something physical or audible is very common. But I
Hmm.
have learned that it's different with all of you. It just really is. But I want people to hear themselves in what you're describing and consider whether or not they're in the spectrum themselves. Because I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not in the spectrum, you are. So I think that being diagnosed can be actually helpful because it can give you the perspective about yourself that you need. I think one of the worst things that happens when people are undiagnosed is low self esteem. That's the word we
Mm,
used to use. Now we call it lack of confidence, lack of self-worth. There's a million different terms you can give it, but it all boils down to the same thing. When you don't know who you are, it's much easier to believe that you're nothing, you're no one, or there's something drastically wrong with you and it's all your fault.
hmm.
Um, did you ever have those sort of thoughts? Am I describing what
Uh,
you were thinking or am I off?
Absolutely. Like it it was more prevalent when I didn't know what was going on, right? Um, not Now it's there's so much out there in terms of resources. There's a lot more better understanding on autism and like even testing. Like uh, kids these days can go into you can even do an autism quotient test online. Even you can just Google
Oh,
and take it. You can work with your school counselor um, and get tested to facilitate the conversation. But um, like growing up, I felt awful, right? Um, I never really showed it, right? I wish I had had the resources I had when the kids do today. Um, and So I had I was also diagnosed with ADHD when I was a kid, and so everything was kind of like chalked up to that. Whenever I would say I felt different, it's like
Oh, okay.
you're just being
Mm,
ADHD, dude. Like and that wasn't it, right? I was on Ritalin and uh, later Adderall, and even then, it helped a little, but like that low self esteem was prevalent in everything I did, which made me even work
mhm,
harder because I didn't want to feel that way, and even
right.
though I did well in school, like the social component made me um, feel worse and feel more awkward.
Do you think you would have felt a little bit better had you been diagnosed as a teen?
Hmm. I think it depends. I think at at the time, like I'm using it from my context and my time frame, uh,
Mhm,
because autism was not as well understood then as it is now. Um, I'm kind of thankful. Well, on one hand, I'm thankful I didn't get diagnosed then because uh because I was even ignorant in my mid 30s about it, right? Uh but it more so I think the world was a lot more ignorant in the early or late 90s, early 2000s about it, that I think I would have just I would have gotten made fun of more, um, and I think it would have hurt or I would have perceived it as hurting my reputation more. And I'm using that in air quotes, right? Because kids were a little bit more horrible then than they are today, right? I think kids and people are a lot more understanding and open now about autism, and are a lot more accommodating. Um,
mhm.
but so on. Uh, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say yes and no, because I've talked about this, on and off air with people, and some places in the world are still where you were growing up as a society. Their understanding is still just really ignorant,
Hmm.
and they just genuinely don't know. One of the reasons I have you on here is your age, is the fact that you're not a teenager and that you've already gone through that phase and you went through it in many different cultures and countries. There's not a lot of people that I can bring on here that have that combination of experience. So that's why, you can speak to that a little bit more, but I find that just in talking to people, there are some places in this world where people are just, they have zero clues what they're dealing with and what they're looking at. And
Yeah.
instead, they tell the kid, you're stupid, there's something wrong with you, because they genuinely don't know that the kid's brain is literally wired differently, and they're
Right.
probably the most gifted person in the room, but because they don't fall into the quote unquote normie box, they're ostracized or treated less than. And one thing I know about self-esteem, it is absolutely everything. Your confidence about yourself can propel your future or kill everything. And that's why I think this is an important conversation,
Yeah.
because I want to talk a little bit more about you growing up, and tell the audience, it's on your website and it's in your book, but tell the audience, what are the different countries you grew up in specifically?
Oof. Okay. So I I was born in Paraguay. I don't remember it because I left when I was 2. I lived in Bolivia and Ecuador, Ghana, Senegal. So that was just, and the U.S. That was when I was just a kid. But
Mhm,
later, I lived in Switzerland. I started. I did college there. I lived in Oman. Spent time in Turkey. Spent almost 5 years in Madagascar. Um, and yeah, so it was a varied, and a lot of my professional work took me to small assignments in places like Benin, Mali, Bangladesh, Haiti, mainly because of my language abilities. Right, I learned French at such a young age that my work led me to French speaking Africa a lot of the times.
And I wanted the audience to hear that because you are very fascinating, and we've only touched on a teeny tiny piece of information about you. But I wanted them to hear that you're not some guy who just lives in one small little town and knows 3 things, and that's all you know how to talk about. You've traveled around the world. You've dealt with all these different cultures on different continents, and you did all of this, until you're 35 at least, undiagnosed. And, trying to navigate a world of quote unquote normal people when you yourself were not getting what everybody else was getting. Your brain's wired differently, so you weren't getting, picking up on social cues and things like that. And I just can't imagine the amount of masking that you had to do to be able to get to do all of that. I think that's pretty amazing. What do you have to say to the young Christophers who are out there right now in Guatemala and Zimbabwe and Taiwan, and name a country, where they're just not as affluent in the knowledge of people in the spectrum? And maybe they're listening to you and saying, oh my God, that's like me. What do you have to say to them?
I would say, first of all, like, it's okay. There are a lot of
Mhm.
there are a lot of resources you could look into. Um, I think my favorite one is called Autism Speaks, where they have a toolkit, and they have the autism quotient, and you can learn more about it. Um, and then and then afterwards, like, it's okay. It's a gift, right? Um, Even though it might not be culturally accepted in most places, to your earlier point, like, you don't have to go more beyond that, other than, accept yourself, and that's okay, and, work with your parent. And I would encourage you to look at it as a superpower, because it is. It it there's enough out there in terms of information and knowledge that you can know how to leverage autism to your advantage, because when leveraged correctly, it it is such it's such a strength, because we have to survive a world by thinking outside of the box all the time. And it's not just true for autism, it's true for people with dyslexia, it's true for people with ADHD. We are such out of the box thinkers that it benefits society more with the way you think, and don't be afraid to embrace it, even though it might not be culturally acceptable at right now, because eventually it's gonna come to your country, or it's enough research and enough knowledge about autism is gonna come to where you live, and it might not necessarily change your culture, but at least it might help the people around you see and embrace your autism more than it is now.
So you're saying that people with autism still have value?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think, people like, hate him all you want, but Elon
Hmm.
Musk is on the spectrum. And look, he's launching rockets. He's the richest
True.
man in the world, right? Um, that that may be too far long, but, like, there's a lady I know who got diagnosed in her 60s, and she was a federal
Wow.
appointed judge. There is this girl Lauren I know, she was a broadcaster for NPR, and got diagnosed around the same time I did. And she told her story to the world. Then there's me. I'm just some random dude who builds social impact models so that NGOs and corporate social responsibility teams can measure their social impact in financial terms. There's so much value we can add to this world, and, like, you shouldn't be ashamed because you're a little bit different.
Yes. And I wanted them to hear that coming from you. And I think it's a very important message. Now, I mentioned earlier that you're an author. What is the name of your book, and how does this conversation tie into your
hmm
book?
Um, so it does in one of two ways. It it follows my youth as growing up autistic and then getting tested, right? So on one hand of the book, there is that sense of relief that everything I've been
Yeah.
feeling has had a name, and now what? The other thing it deals with is the moment of abuse that came with it. And I got out of, with anything that there's going to be, you're going to encounter some resistance from the world when they find out you are different, but that's okay because that can be overcome, which the book tracks is like overcoming that moment in time. And now it's like, now that I'm not in that situation, now what? Like, how can I thrive now moving forward?
Okay. What is the name of the book?
Oh, it's called Now That I'm Still Here.
Okay, good. And how can people find you?
Oh, they can find me on Substack. That's where I do a lot of the day-to-day writing. I talk about things like growing up autistic, the impact of masking. I talk about other issues like grief, neurodivergence, and rebuilding. But people can also go to my website, chriscarazas.com. But a lot of the activity, I don't use Facebook. I do use Facebook on occasion, but most of my activity is on Substack. I should get on Instagram. I mean, I am on Instagram, but I should use it more.
Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. And I really, truly hope that you changed a life today just by telling your story. And honestly, audience, for the audience, you really only heard less than half a page of his life. So I would recommend that you either follow him on Substack where he puts a lot of other content, but I know he talks a lot about the details of his life in his book. And I really think that a lot of people can relate to what he has to say and some of the stuff that he's actually been through. It's about so much more than autism. That's the conversation I chose to have for today's episode, but he has a lot more to say. So once again, Chris, thank you so, so much for coming on.
I hope so, and thank you for having me. I really enjoy your platform as well and the conversations that you're having. And I'm just a little fragment in the quilt that you have that you're making here on your podcast as well.
And now for a mind-shifting moment. I want to point out something that Christopher said today that goes beyond autism. When your brain is wired differently, when you see the world differently, when you see things other people don't see, when your experience is different than what you hear of everybody around you, you might not be weird. You might be gifted. You see, sometimes blending in is one of the worst things you can do for yourself. Sometimes masking holds back the real you. In his case, he was masking to hold back the real him to be accepted and blend in with the world. But how many of you are masking your real brilliance, your real greatness? How many of you are trying to blend in? Don't blend in. Be the real you. The people who think differently, they're the ones who save lives. They're the ones who come up with the creative innovations. They're the ones who better society. It's not usually the ones who blend in. Just something to think about. You've been listening to MindShift Power Podcast. For complete show notes on this episode and to join our global movement, find us at fatimabey.com. Until next time, always remember, there's power in shifting your thinking.